Tawo, Edlenete, Hoa. Hello and welcome, my friends, to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Girls Two-Spirit Plus Community Awareness Event. We are live from Treaty 8 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree and Dene, as well as the unceded traditional territory of the Métis peoples. We acknowledge all beings of this territory. We honor our ancestors who walked these lands before us, the relatives who walk with us now, and those that will walk them after us. I'm your host, Jess Croucher, Neheo Esqueo of Fort McMurray 468 First Nation, descendant of Paul Cree Band and Willow Lake Band. I'm the founder of Powomu Creative, as well as the Community and Indigenous Relations Specialist with CETA, and I'm so honored to be here with you today. Hi Mustahi for joining us on Red Dress Day, a day of awareness to address the ongoing crisis of systemic and gender-based violence on Indigenous peoples in our communities. This event is brought to you in collaboration with Athabasca Tribal Council, Nistawoyou Association Friendship Center, McMurray Métis Local 1935, Chipewyan Prairie First Nation, Fort McMurray 468 First Nation, Fort McKay First Nation, Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation, Mikisew Cree First Nation, the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo, Center of Hope, Pride YMM, Waypoints, and our friends at Arts Council Wood Buffalo. We are so thankful that our community has come together to acknowledge this important day, increase visibility and impact because we are stronger together. Today we are discussing missing, murdered, and exploited Indigenous peoples, and we would like to gently remind our viewers that this subject matter can be upsetting and even triggering for some, so we encourage you to reach out for support if you feel distressed. Resources are in the caption of this video. Carley Moore, Indigenous Health Support Worker of Nistawoyou Association Friendship Center, and Liz Keating, Mental Health and Addiction Support with Center of Hope, are on standby to support you. For the next little while, we welcome you to listen with an open heart and an open mind as we hear from our Indigenous leadership and local dignitaries in their support of Indigenous communities. We'll view a mini documentary produced by McMurray Métis Local 1935 about their stunning Red Dress project before we head to our live panel discussion with local advocates to learn about the cause, calls to action, and resources within our community. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions, so please put your questions in the comments below of this live stream and we will try to address as many as we can. But first, we ask that you please join Elder Lorraine Cardinal Corrigan as she blesses us with an opening prayer.
Thank you, Creator, for bringing us together today, and we pray for strength, unity from this day forward. Kanam skumtin he mercy.
Tanse eglanate. Hello everyone, my name is Carla Buffalo and I'm the CEO with the Athabasca Tribal Council. I would like to ask that we stand together against the violence towards Indigenous people. Please listen to today's speakers and partake in the various online activities hosted by a number of partner organizations. I ask that you focus on their words. They are speaking for Indigenous people who have been silenced by violence. When thinking about your own silence, consider this: your silence is a form of acceptance. We must work towards change.
Tansy, hello. My name is Gail Gallup and I am the president of McMurray Métis Local 1935. Today we are proudly wearing red to help spread awareness for all of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Indigenous women are the matriarchs of our culture. They are our kukums, our grandmothers, our mothers, our aunties, our sisters, and our cousins, our nieces, our loved ones and friends. They deserve to be protected and respected, celebrated, and most importantly, feel safe wherever they may be. It was in 2015 when we first learned about the federal government national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. I am deeply saddened. 6 years later, we are still having to create awareness about this national issue. I do applaud each and every one of today's panelists, community leaders and organizations for lending your voices to today's event, to speak out, and for all those attending with open ears and to learn more. My heart goes out to all the women, girls, and Two-Spirit people who have gone missing or who have been murdered, and to their families. McMurray Métis stands in solidarity with all our Indigenous sisters and their families. In commemoration, we have a red dress displayed in the front entrance of our lobby and wear our beaded red dress pins with pride. If you drive by the local at 441 Sakatoa Trail on the right-hand side of Highway 63 when you are headed south, you will notice that we have lit our teepees and office up with red lighting to shine a light on this important issue. We will continue to advocate for better safety and security for all Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited people.
Hello everyone, Mayor Don Scott here. I'd like to begin by recognizing that we are in Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Dene, and Métis peoples. Thank you for the invitation to take part in this important event. It is sincerely appreciated. On the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit people, we recognize a tragedy that resonates deeply in our region and extends right across the country. Systemic violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people is a national crisis that requires urgent, informed, and collaborative action. That's why the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo joins Indigenous, local, provincial, and national governments and organizations in support of this day. We also support the justice-related Truth and Reconciliation calls to action and the annual vigils to honor all those whose lives were taken and the families impacted. Today, as a municipality, we've issued a proclamation to recognize and highlight the importance of this solemn day, and we're using our social media platforms to help build awareness. This evening, the lights on the Saline Creek Bridge in Waterways and the canopy at McDonald Island Park will be red in honor of all those who have been lost. These gestures represent our deep concern as well as our commitment to stand with you. Once again, thank you for including us in this important event.
Hi, my name is Treasure Cooper and I'm the Cultural Coordinator here at McMurray Métis. To commemorate the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Red Dress Project. The idea for the patchwork red dress was a joint brainstorm between Lorraine Corrigan and me. I then asked if there were any Métis members that would like to participate in the making of it. The idea was that each participant would make 1 or 2 8-inch squares inspired by the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Movement. The only rule was that all the things used to decorate the square would have to be red. We would then assemble all the pieces together into a patchwork dress in commemoration for MMIW, and in doing so, creating this beautiful art piece that now graces the office at the McMurray Métis. I'd like to thank Lorraine Corrigan, Virginia Whitford, Elsie Cardinal, Stephanie Manili, Christine Alexander and her daughter Sadie, Melanie Dene and her daughter Shelley, Natasha Tatum, and Renee Lavalley.
My apologies, I was muted. Welcome back to our live presentation. Hi, thank you to Elder Lorraine for opening in a good way. Thank you to our leadership and friends for sharing stories and support. I'd like to mention that this live stream will be available to view later on both ATC, Athabasca Tribal Council, and Arts Council Wood Buffalo's YouTube channels. I am here with our esteemed panelists, an incredible group of people from around our region, each with their own knowledge and passion for advocacy, equality, and social justice in their respective backgrounds. We are honored to have them here to teach us and to answer your questions about MMIWG2S+. The goal of this panel is to learn about the ongoing issue of systemic and gender-based violence against Indigenous peoples, the facts, the stories, as well as hear about ways our community can support meaningful change. We invite our viewers to ask questions, so please comment on this live feed in the section below and we will address them. We would love to answer all of them, but we are restricted by time. However, we invite you to reach out to any of our community partners for programming and resources support to support your ongoing healing and learning journey. And again, a gentle reminder that this is sensitive subject matter, and we encourage you to reach out for support if you feel in any way distressed during or after this presentation. Resources are in the caption of this video. So I would like to welcome our panel. Hello, everyone. I would like us to go around the fire and introduce yourselves to our viewers. Can you please let them know who you are, where you're from, and why this day is important to you? I'll start with Rhonda.
Yeah, my name is Rhonda Robinson. I use the pronouns she and her. I am a Métis woman. I'm a mother, a daughter, an aunt, a sister, a community member, and an advocate. I currently work at the not the Friendship Center. I work at the Center of Hope as the Fund Development Coordinator, and I also am a group facilitator for Rcmp Treatment Center for a Women's Addiction and Recovery Group. In addition to that, I sit on a couple local and provincial advisory boards for addiction and mental health.
Thank you. Nicole? You're on mute.
Sego, good morning, folks. My name is Nicole Orji, and I am Haudenosaunee from the Six Nations of the Grand River in Southern Ontario. I've been playing, praying, and working in Fort McMurray for the last 10 years, and I am currently the outreach manager at WAYPOINTS, which is a local social profit working to create communities, families, and homes free from violence. I am here today because I'm a survivor of generational indoctrination and assimilation. I'm here to honor our stolen sisters and ancestors' legacies. I'm here to safeguard the rights and well-being of our future generations. I am here because we have to uncover the truth before we get to reconciliation. And I am here because I don't want to be next. Yeah.
Hi. Sarah, can you share, please?
Tanse, Sarah Ludet, Nitsikason. Fort McMurray, Otinia. I'm from Fort McMurray. I'm Nehio Apatogusan Isquo, so I'm a Cree half-breed or Métis woman, and I'm here to join this conversation as somebody who knows that change can happen and will happen, especially when we all gather like this. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Okay.
Hi. Thank you, Sarah. Steph?
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Harp. I'm born and raised in Edmonton. My community is Mackay First Nation. I work for my community in some really great initiatives. Very, very happy about that and excited. And I'll be working with Athabasca Tribal Council as well to bring some initiatives to the north. So yeah, it's been amazing. I am also a international advocate for murdered and missing and exploited Indigenous peoples of Canada. I have my TEDx talk out that they're using in schools right now, so that's really great for the youth. And I also am a participant. Well, I was a participant for the National Inquiry, and I work locally, provincially, nationally, and internationally with United Nations and youth representatives from all over the world. So thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today. And I'm here because my mother, my friends, and myself as a murder attempt survivor, I'm here for all of them and all of the murdered and missing families that I work with and take care of. So thank you. Marcy Joe.
Hi. Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Mitch. I use all pronouns. I am a Métis two-spirited person from the Métis Nation of Ontario. I am the chair of Pride YMM, as well as a member of the Regional Advisory Committee for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equality for the RMWB, and I am here to be a voice and advocate for two-spirited people.
Hi. Thank you all for sharing. I would like to open the discussion with our first question. What is MMIWG2S+? What does it stand for, and what does it mean? Steph, I wonder if you could open us up.
Well, it's for our murdered, missing, and Indigenous women, girls, and our two-spirited plus LGBTQIA gender diverse community. But we also have to include the men and boys. The men and boys, they get Starlight Toured, they get exploited, they get targeted, they get, they go murdered and missing as well. And they need to be included in a part of this. So a bunch of us people on the ground and advocates and grassroots community have come together to change that to MMEIP, murdered, missing, and exploited Indigenous peoples, so that it includes them all. And so at this point in time, we don't want anyone left behind. And that's really, really important that all are included, because all are affected. And this is a national crisis, a national shame, a national genocide, a national oppression, a human rights violations, and a racist system that needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. And we need to lay a foundation now, and that's what it means to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, can you add to that?
For sure. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. So MMIWG2S+ is one manifestation of the ongoing genocide that is taking place across Turtle Island. It is the culmination of centuries of power, control, assimilation, violence, broken treaties, and promises. It is the ongoing violation of both human and Indigenous rights and treaties. MMIWG2S+ represents the colonial goal to wipe us out, to get rid of the so-called Indian problem. But we are still here. And when we speak, you hear the voices of our ancestors. It is the disproportionate rates of all forms of violence and abuse that Indigenous women, girls, and gender and sexual diverse peoples experience. It is the fact that Indigenous women and girls represent 24% of homicide victims, despite the fact that Indigenous peoples only account for less than 5% of the overall population. It is the fact that Indigenous women and girls between the ages of 25 to 44 with Indian status, and that's what it's still called, are 5 times more likely than other women of the same cohort to die because of violence. It is forced sterilization, birth alerts, and racist systems. It is a stain on the past and the present, and I hope we can work together to remove some of the stains for the future, because everyone deserves a life free from violence. Thank you.
Hi, Nicole. Mitch, would you like to add to that?
Thank you. Stephanie and Nicole have really covered so much of the topic already, and to me, MMIWG2S, it represents the fact that Indigenous people are 10 times more likely to experience violence than white people, and that already our Indigenous queer community becomes amplified and multiplied, because when we look at intersectionality, the queer community is already faces their own discrimination, their own disenfranchisement, and when we combine that with being Indigenous, it just gets even more. It just amplifies and gets even worse.
Thank you for that. My next question is, oh, did someone want to talk? Steph, go ahead.
I'd like to add to that, okay? So our gender diverse community are one of our most exploited community in this country of peoples, of community, for the fact that they have their own struggles, and with everything they have to face as what they just shared with us, that Mitch just shared. That's on my list. I have a safety list that I toured all over this country. And because they don't have safe space, because they know when they come out and share their truth, sometimes it's not accepted, sometimes it's embraced. And many of them are on the streets, they're homeless, they don't have this acceptance, they come on social media to share their truth and they get this negativity. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So if you do your history, our two-spirited have always been here, have always had their role, okay? In the South, they had beautiful, beautiful traditional roles. And that is something that needs to be embraced. They've always been here. Do your history.
That way. My next question is, why does the red dress represent the missing, murdered, and exploited? Rhonda, can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jessica and Stephanie, Nicole, and Mitch for your sharing of wisdom so far. So what I've discovered through the years is that, initially I'd see red dresses hanging, or whether it was in a place of work or in the community or pictures of it, and became curious about what that meant. And that was probably about 7 or 8 years ago for me. So Jamie Black is a Métis artist who had a art project in response to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit back in 2010, and created this project of red dresses to be hanging, which has then grown into much more than one project and one awareness. Other artists and communities took interest in that, and through her discussions with different communities and elders and people that she knew, red was chosen as it's seen by many as a way for the spirits to be able to see and come back. It's the only color, some believe, that is able to be seen. And it also represents, wearing a red pin, seeing it. What we're doing here today is having a voice for those who don't have a voice, and speaking about the things that they're not able to speak about due to being murdered or missing or exploited. And also red relating to blood and lifeline, and something that connects all of us, regardless of who we are, how we identify, where we live, that there is a connection. And it is also a symbol of vitality and violence. Seeing an empty dress hanging without a woman wearing it is pretty powerful experience to realize that the body is not there, and really makes me think about the women who are missing, the women who have not been found, and the women in the future, who will be impacted. And hopefully the more that we talk about the Red Dress Day, and the more we educate and the more people learn, that those numbers will go down, and that, the violence will stop.
Thank you. Sarah, can I have you add to that?
For sure. I mean, Rhonda did mention everything that I was going to say too, so I won't repeat that. But what I've come to learn, just even in my own understanding of indigeneity, of being an Indigenous woman and reclaiming that, that lifeblood component, red being that's very symbolic color, is also lending itself to blood memory, and we cannot deny that. So when we have to do these national days of awareness to make other people aware, we live with that every day. We're living with this. And what I also, really appreciate with the red dress, when I was 19, I had a red dress. I used to call it my power dress. And I didn't realize it at the time. I just I felt pretty, right? I felt pretty and I felt like powerful. I didn't understand it. But now that I've come to learn a little bit about the deeper meaning behind that color, it really has to do with that, with the blood memory, with that life force that we carry as women. And, so for me, that red dress is also a little bit of the language component to it. Is if you take red dress and just pronounce it a little bit different, redress. When you redress something, you are remedying and setting it right. And so I think that to me is really powerful as well, that part of the language part, because we need to set it right in terms of women and the place that they hold. Canada has a lot of work to do, and we have to keep on doing these until we can actually get it right, until we can set up women into that position that they are honored and thriving. So when we say, I wore this shirt, "Come on, Canada, stop the genocide," because really, if we do not become very loud about this and we don't start calling it what it is, it will go away. May 6th will arrive and something else will happen that'll take our attention. We need to be reminded daily that this is an ongoing issue. It's systemic. And, so if we don't, and the way anything that works in a systemic manner, we can forget about it. We could be numb to it. We become just, this is part of what's normal. And so wearing red, every time you wear red, just think of that. Every time you see red, think of it. I took a walk just down into the park with my granddaughters. And I'm sitting there on the bench and I look over and they have some red willow planted in a very, very strategic way, right? So it's like maybe about 6 inches away from another plant. And then you got some trees that are very nicely groomed. The red willow is also nicely, kept. And I come to realize also that even in there's little nuances that are very visible if you just pay attention to it. So what you would know about that red willow, it becomes an ornamental shrub. They call it a shrub. But if we want to come back to understanding the meaning behind even a plant like that, plant being a relative, that being a plant that has such important medicinal properties and always had been. It wasn't ornamental. It had purpose. And it was allowed to grow and flourish on its own. So those were little, these are little things that I'm just always paying attention to now. So red, yeah, it's powerful. Let's always wear red. Thank you.
Hi. Our next question is, can we share some of the statistics on the missing and murdered and exploited in Canada, Alberta, or our region? Nicole, can I ask you to answer that question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all of that, Sarah. I think it's super important to acknowledge that red dress is redress and work towards that on a daily basis. And thank you, Jess. This is actually such a difficult question to answer because there are so many discrepancies between the numbers, especially on federal and provincial levels. There is not one single database or a source of data, especially because there wasn't always race-based data collected or captured in the past. Many times cases go cold or an alternative narrative is given that highlights the apathy of Canadian society. The numbers of missing person cases in the Sovereign Bodies Institute fluctuates based on when an individual is found. It also includes unknown cases where an individual is removed from a missing persons database at some point, but no evidence exists to determine whether they were found or deceased. According to that institute, Alberta had the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people between 2015 and 2019, with 93. That was followed by 65 in Ontario, 61 in Saskatchewan, 56 in Manitoba, and 38 in British Columbia. An Rcmp report released in 2014 and covering an earlier period determined there were 1,017 homicides of Indigenous women between 1980 and 2012, revealing a rate of about 2.6 deaths per month. These are not just statistics. These are our sisters, our aunties, our relations. And the inquiry found the Rcmp numbers were likely an undercount of that. And that's been heard again time and time throughout the national inquiry and the final report. However, according to the Native Women's Association of Canada, Alberta has the second highest number of cases in Canada. According to the NWAC, there are 9 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and 93 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Alberta. This accounts for 16% of all cases in NWAC's database. The number of cases is second only to British Columbia. More murder cases than missing cases. 84% of cases in Alberta are murdered cases, which is considerably higher than the national average at just 67%. The percentage of women missing and girls is lower than the national average, 14% in Alberta versus 20% nationally. Lastly, I'll just say women aged 31 to 44 represent almost a third of all disappearances in Alberta. This is much higher than the national average at 21%. And this is significant as too often cases of missing Indigenous people are stereotyped and or dismissed as involving only runaways. Maybe they're gone out partying and they'll be back a few days. But not only is this untrue, it also implies that young girls that do run away are somehow undeserving of attention or protection. Almost half of murder cases occurred in rural or reserved communities in Alberta. And overall, most of the known cases in Alberta occurred in urban areas, particularly Edmonton and Calgary. However, urban cases represent a smaller share of murdered cases, 58% compared to 50% in all of Canada. Lastly, in Alberta, or Fort McMurray, between 2004 and the present day, we have a record of 8 missing or murdered relations, but this does not reflect our sisters who were missing or murdered outside of the RMWB, but had the municipality or any of our communities as their home community. It also does not reflect our relations who went missing prior to 2005. We honor all of our fallen sisters, their families and communities, locally, provincially, and across Canada. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Nicole. Stephanie, can I have you add to that?
Well, it's not in the Canadian, it's not on the Canadian agenda to start collecting data and evidence against themselves of how they're failing. You know, and I've been in a room with the Alberta government and told them all their failings, and that was years ago. And it is very vacant in the north, but we have a lot of work to do, and the work's going to get done here right away. And we have to do the work ourselves. This has to be at a grassroots level. This has to be at a grassroots level. This is how we're going to find the truth. You know, my mother's case was dismissed. We don't get justice. It's different for us. So we have to approach it differently. We have to do the work ourselves. So that's what I'm doing. That's what a lot of us are doing. That's what this team is getting done. And we're moving forward because we can't be under government thumb and be restricted or muzzled or anything like that. It has to come from our people, our grassroots, and our truth. So that's for sure. Mitch, can you add to that?
Sorry, can you ask again?
Can you add like your what's going on with the stats for your gender diverse community representation for where you are, and anyone investing and caring about that, because they should. Can you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know, especially our most vulnerable queer population is our trans population, and they experience violence, I believe, at 20 times the national rate, if I'm not mistaken. And then that is always increased for Black and people of color, including Indigenous peoples. And I don't have the exact statistics, but we know that all queer people, but especially our trans community, and experience way higher rates of violence and murders. And it increases when you put race into the equation as well.
That's right. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Stephanie, Nicole. Why are Indigenous peoples affected more than non-Indigenous peoples? Nicole, can you please open up with that question?
For sure. And I'm pretty sure Stephanie will talk about, the spectrum of all of our relations, but for this, I will talk to specifically women, girls, and two-spirit people on a historical context. So to begin to understand the severity of the tragedy facing Indigenous women and girls today, we must first understand the history. The issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people in Canada is as old as the development of Canada itself, and must be understood within the historical context of settler colonialism that has led to the ongoing racialization and sexualization of Indigenous women and girls. Historically, Indigenous women were sexualized and held against dangerous cultural attitudes and stereotypes that permeate many facets of Canadian society today. Hundreds of years ago in North America, Indigenous women and men lived with the radical belief that all people were created equal. All roles within the community were important, and everybody had a place. Colonists from Europe first arrived in North America over 500 years ago. The Europeans came from a culture where men had all the power, and we know this type of culture is called a patriarchy. When Europeans first encountered Indigenous peoples, the colonists were surprised at the expanse of roles and responsibilities carried out by Indigenous women, especially compared to the limited roles allowed for European women. European men did not receive or respect that Indigenous women could be capable leaders, which also often led to our exclusion in decision-making. The patriarchal views held by the colonists soon began to influence Indigenous communities. Europeans regarded Indigenous peoples as inferior, and strategies were put into place to assimilate the Indigenous population into the mainstream patriarchal culture. As the colonists established their own communities and asserted control over the land, they enacted various harmful policies designed to control and assimilate Indigenous people. The systemic assimilation policy is known as colonization. The effects of colonization have deeply harmed Indigenous peoples, eroding our languages, traditions, and cultures. Consequently, the respect of Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people was degraded. And those colonists imposed strict rules that defined what women were allowed to do, seeking to eliminate the roles where women had power or influence. And traditionally, Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse people, as was mentioned earlier, had more respect and freedoms. But sadly, today we can see that the colonists succeeded at limiting and degrading the rules for Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Mitch, can you add to that?
Absolutely. So specifically when we look at Two-Spirit people, we had generations of queer Indigenous elders killed at residential schools. We know the impact that residential schools had on our Indigenous communities as a whole, but those effects were compounding for our Two-Spirited community. It's important to remember that these schools and colonization in general stripped away the importance of Two-Spirit people. Where we previously held positions of honor and importance, they stripped away our place in society and labeled us as British. Residential schools separated people by gender. So Indigqueer people were beaten into strict gender roles or they were killed. Then the survivors were taught that Two-Spirit people were wrong and that we were sinners in the Christian faith that they forced upon us. They disenfranchised us from our communities and our family, and this disenfranchisement left us vulnerable to so many things. And they created a society where Two-Spirit people do not feel accepted by their families and communities, and it's been a long journey of reestablishing ourselves as we traditionally were. They left us vulnerable to homelessness, addiction, violence, and more. And something Nicole touched on was the sexualization of Indigenous women, and our trans community faces that same sexualization. And so, as I said before, when you combine being Indigenous and being trans or Two-Spirited, that sexualization and fetishization leads to more exploitation, and people think of our community and think that we can be owned, used, and exploited, and that our lives have less value. And all of that compounding makes us so vulnerable.
Thank you, Mitch. Steph, would you like to share some input?
Yeah, I just want to thank Mitch for being here. It's really, really important that that this voice is here, and I want to thank him. I just want to thank the community and Mitch, what you do. It's important that you're here. Thank you. So, Colton Boushie, Tina Fontaine, all of that is sending a message to Canada. Stephanie English, all these cases that were absolutely failed, that were just a horrific execution of whatever justice is, because there is no justice for us still. We don't use justice system, we use legal system, because it's a word we don't know. We've never really experienced that. What is that? When it comes to the Indigenous community, to the gender diverse community, to people of color, it's different. And when you share a story like Stephanie, English's daughter, Joey English, I work with the family and just know what that mother has gone through. But when Stephanie English was chopped up into pieces and put in garbage bags and thrown into the garbage, and the guy got about 18 months, it's just ridiculous. So that sends out a message. So the justice system, Canada, the agenda was sent out a message. The justice system sends out a message. The media, who should be definitely accountable in all of this, sends out a message to unwell Canadians. And when the overpopulated world, mental health is an issue. So you send a message out to unwell Canadians that want to hurt others, that want to kill others, that you can chop us up, throw us in garbage bags, and only do so much time. So that's a major, major problem. And, shame on everyone involved in that. Thank you.
Hi, Steph. Sarah, would you like to add to that?
I guess the only thing I can really add is, for locally here in Fort McMurray and in our area, this area from a historical, context, you think about the exploitation of resources. Prior to oil, we're looking at the fur industry. And that in itself is, if you're not paying attention, Think about what that means from that patriarchal, from that colonial ideal, and what that means to Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit. Like, think about that. Even in that context, when you think, okay, they're coming in, you've got the exploitation of these resources, you're going to have the exploitation of women, girls, Two-Spirited plus. You will have that. It's undeniable. And so for us to even think in today, oh, we're doing it right. We're doing it properly now. That's why these calls to justice are so, like, why are we not paying attention to that? The calls to justice go out primarily government, industry, organizations, and yes, to individuals, to each of us. But, you know, when we can just sit by idly and say we are an economic engine, we're also the exploitation engine that's happening. And so, yeah, that's about all I can say. You know, that's undeniable. There's enough research done, and maybe it's not done by you know, by organizations like the police or by our justice, what we call the justice system, just them system. But it is done by our local grassroots people, because we see it, we're living it, we know the story. So, you know, it's exploitation is going on all the time, and it's going on here. Don't kid yourself. It's just because we've slowed down a little bit. That's still going on, and it's still going on because we still have those divisions in, you know, there's still that marginalization that's happening. And as long as that's happening, also the exploitation is happening. Thank you.
Halfway. Thank you for that, Sarah. Would anyone else like to add to that? Okay. What is the final report and calls to action? Can we describe what it is and what the whole process behind that was? Sarah, can I ask you to share on that one?
Well, I won't recite every call to action. There's 231 calls, and in 6 years, what calls have been met? I think we're trying to make some headway in that. But for me, you know, I'll just take one of the calls goes out specifically to educators, and because I am a teacher and I might not be in a classroom per se anymore, but you know, for me, it's something that I speak to those upcoming teachers, is that you have to address this in your classes. Maybe if you're teaching a grade 1-2 class, it might not look the same as what you're teaching to a grade 12 class, but you should be talking about it. You should be talking to all your students about what it means in our country, what's real. Because every time, and I just recently taught a university course just this past term, the winter term, it just ended. And every single time I get the same kind of, you know, well, how come we don't learn about this in school? So why are we not learning about this in school? So as a call to action, and I'm just going to speak specifically to all those teachers out there, please think about it. If you are unsure, talk to people, come talk to me. Go on the internet, look at the resources, the National Aboriginal Women's Association. I can't remember the acronym right off the top of my head. For some reason, it's just gone. But, you know, they have resources there. You just have to type it in, go look. And what can I do in my classroom? And so the calls are many. But if you can just focus on one, and that is to bring it, to talk about it. Put a red dress in your classroom. I just want to end with, because I know other people may be able to speak more clearly as to the cause specific, but I want to talk about what's going on in the Yukon. The Yukon are doing something about it. They've identified from this from this document, from this national inquiry, okay, they've come up with their own process. And their process is looking at addressing those systemic, causes, right? So they've identified 4 pathways. One being the historical, multi-generational and intergenerational trauma. That's one of them. It's a pathway to this going on. And it continues to go on wherever you are. And then the second one being maintaining status quo. And think about that. Our institutions do that all the time, maintaining status quo. Third, social and economic marginalization. Is that happening in Fort McMurray? Yeah, you can bet it is. And the fourth pathway is ignoring it. Ignoring that there is agency and expertise of Indigenous people and communities that's going on, and we're ignoring it. So the Yukon is doing something. I'm not saying everybody let's follow what the Yukon is, but at least go and read what they're doing and think about bringing it back home, and let's make some change. Because I'm ready, and I hope all of you are as well. Okay.
That way. Hi, Sarah. Rhonda, can I have you add to that final report and calls to action?
Yeah, thanks. I got goosebumps listening for the last little bit here. I think what I'd like to specifically speak to is in and around, and it's been mentioned a little bit here, but the mental health and addiction side of things, and the exploitation, and just really, I've had to really reflect over the years and look at my language and the way I choose to talk about, anything to do with exploitation, missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. And last week,
I think we're having a bit of technical difficulty, connection issue. While we wait for Ron to reconnect, I will go to Nicole. Nicole, can you please add to calls to action, final report?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So I'll just give a little context to the final report. So on June 3rd, 2019, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls released its final report titled Reclaiming Power in Place. I believe it was dropped in the comments somewhere. And this report is the result of more than 2 years of testimony from Indigenous knowledge keepers, experts, and survivors and family members of missing and murdered Indigenous relations. In addition to cross-country, cross-Canada public hearings and evidence gathering from many Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups and individuals, the final report was unveiled in Gatineau, Quebec. And I just want to add this one piece to it that says, in unequivocal terms, one of the commissioners, Miriam Buehler, condemned Canadian society for its indifference and inaction in the face of the tragedy confronting Indigenous women and girls for the past several decades. Quote, "The hard truth is that we live in a country whose laws and institutions perpetuate violations of fundamental rights amounting to a genocide against Indigenous women, girls, and gender and sexual diverse people." So I think that that's a pretty bold statement. I don't think that there's really anything incorrect in that statement. I think if we were to look at the 5 key elements of genocide from the United Nations, you would see that Canada is complicit in each of those 5 actions. And that's really what the report is highlighting, along with 231 calls for justice that include provincial governments, federal governments, municipal governments, our social services, our police, and as they said, our Just Us systems. And it also calls on every single Canadian. And it calls on every single Canadian to denounce and speak out against violence against Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA peoples. And it also asks us to decolonize by learning the true history of Canada and Indigenous history in your local area. Learn about and celebrate Indigenous people's histories, cultures, pride, and diversity, acknowledging the land you live on and its importance to local Indigenous communities, both historically and today. And I implore each and every one of our guests and watchers, to the viewers today, to go and check out that report and do your due diligence and walk this path with us, because we can't do it alone. We need everybody to be doing this work, and that's what this report calls for. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Nicole. I would just like to mention we will be sharing the resources, some of the resources discussed at the end of this presentation. So please keep an eye out for that. Rhonda, we'll come back to you. Can you please share what is the final report and calls to action?
Yeah, sorry, it might happen again and freeze. So I apologize for that. I think for me, I think I got a little bit ahead of myself for the next question in answering, but for me, it's a guide, a tool, it's direction of how myself as a community member and as a woman, as a professional, as an advocate and as a friend, things that I can speak up about professionally, any type of system I'm part of that I have influence on, and to have the voices heard of those who aren't able to speak. And then also to make sure for me that I'm not perpetuating anything unknowingly or knowingly, around unconscious biases that have come from all kinds of aspects of my life, and really a learning. And if you don't want to read through the whole report, it is lengthy, then read the calls to action. And it's important. It should be important. It's worth the time to read it and become educated as a community member, to help stop and speak up for those who are not able to speak for themselves.
Hi. Sarah, would you like to add?
Yeah, and I guess I would just like people to be aware that locally, the Sequoia, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Sequoia Youth Center. I think it's that might be a little bit different, but they call it Sequoia out in Chip Prairie Dene First Nation, and they did a kind of like an art, putting it out there, painted rocks painted red, the women from their communities that they wanted to honor that have gone missing or are murdered. And so, one of the things that I just wanted to share with people is when they said, the community of the Sequoia, and Sequoia means young people in Dene. Sequoia stands with the families in our community of Rcmp, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, and anywhere that has been affected by a loved one who has gone missing, murdered, and or a survivor. And they say, you are not alone. Their lives mattered. You are loved and will forever be remembered. Like, how powerful is that? And all children should be able to say that at every level, any level. And so I just wanted to kind of do a little shout out to them, because coming back to what can we do locally? Think of that highway that runs through our community of Fort McMurray, Sagatuau. That in itself is a place of memorial. I'm hoping next year we get to do a little bit more, and we do more every year. So once again,
Thank you, Sarah. Would anyone else like to add to that? Okay, so our final question before we move into our viewer questions is, how can we apply the calls to action locally? What can our viewers do to address this ongoing crisis? And I'm going to ask all of you to share, if that's okay. We'll start with Rhonda.
Thanks, Jess. I think what we can do locally is be kind to other people. Be kind to ourselves. Speak up when you see something that seems unjust, or sometimes you see things happen that leave a bad feeling, and that maybe you should intervene or call for help to intervene. Changing the narrative about history and about the things that we've heard, and my friend Nicole here at something else had mentioned something that really stuck out for me, and this is that continual learning, is also to change the language around victim blaming and putting it on who is responsible. And so rather than saying missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls and Two-Spirit, and exploited are vulnerable. No, they are targeted. And, that was a couple of weeks ago, and it's powerful to me. And so my language has changed, which for me changes impact and affects those around me. I think to educate others and share, share this panel discussion through one of the YouTube channels mentioned previously, Athabasca Tribal Councils and Arts Councils. It will be on there for anybody to view. I think it's to ensure that, we are not perpetuating any type of violence against women in our language, in what we accept as funny, in what we accept as jokes. And that's also been a learning over the years, and speaking up when something is inappropriate that is adding to that violence and degradation that can happen. And I'm just looking at my list here. And I guess if you see something that leaves an unsettling feeling in interaction between two individuals, or is to stop and seek help, because maybe the people involved are not able to seek help on their own. They don't have the tools to do that, whether it be a phone or there's some form of control, or something like that happening. And I think that being here today and listening, and like Sarah said, for teachers to hang that dress in their classroom to teach students and young people about this, and so that narrative gets bigger and it continues on, and like she said, in upcoming years, that this is bigger and louder for those that can't speak. And I know our hope is that this discussion continues throughout the year, not waiting for next year to continue this this discussion. So thank you, Jessica, for asking me.
Hi, Rhonda. Stephanie, what can we do on the ground?
Well, it's all about action, right? That's what it's all about, is strong allyship and, being a voice for the voiceless, and love and action, right? Like, that's what's get rid of all this hate and all this racism. And we got to show them that they can't separate us. There's a lot of fear mongering, a lot of separation, a lot of strategic stuff going on here to keep the agenda rolling and the cogs rolling and the money rolling, right? So we just have to remember that, through right now and this year, it's a lot of profit from suffering. My God. And people think that's in different countries. No, that's here in Canada too. That's here in good old Canada too. So you need to make action. And that's enough talking about this. Okay? We need to move forward now. And we need strong allyship with the gender diverse community. We need strong allyship with the press people of color. And, it's important that all of us that have our human rights violated, that we demand better, that we voice that we kick down doors we can't be nice about. Oh, could you? No, it's not like that anymore. No, we have to move forward. We have to shake it up. We got to make noise, and we need non-Indigenous people to be properly properly educated so that upon their own moral compass, they become part of the solution or part of the problem. Now you're part of the solution, write letters. Now you're part of the solution, create a self-coalition of change and invite people who don't look like you. Go to the Rcmp, go to the police and say, what are you doing for people who don't, I need all you non-Indigenous people to go to them and say, what are you doing for people who don't look like me? That's what we need you to do. Okay, this is a genocide. When National Inquiry came out and all of us genocide, there was no march, there was no uproar, there was nothing. There was nothing. It was ridiculous. And they played with the word and they ignored it. And they're doing, like, it's 2 years, June's right around the corner here. And what are we doing? Like, this is action here. This is action here because a lot of these initiatives are very vacant in the north. But don't worry, me, Carrie Thompson, ATC, and Fort McKay, and all these, like, we're coming. It's just, I can't believe that we need more training for advocates on the ground. We need to make sure in every Indigenous community that we do all these things, and it's coming. Carrie Thompson is someone that I partnered up with. Carrie Thompson is amazing. She is highly skilled. She has all these really great investigations of all the legalities that we need to know when it comes to being properly served and protected. Okay, so it's coming. It's just action, and you need to show them that it's got to be done.
Halfway. Thank you, staff. Mitch, can I have you say?
Yeah, so going through the calls to action, there are quite a few that are specifically in regards to this Two-Spirit community. And so some of those that I think that we need to really do in our community is to research the pre-colonial knowledge and teachings about the place, roles, and responsibility of Two-Spirit people within our community to support belonging, safety, and well-being, and to re-educate the communities who deny their important history and contemporary place and ceremony, and reinstate Two-Spirit people in our decision-making process, in our ceremonies, and making sure that we are included in part of the conversation. Creating mentoring opportunities for Two-Spirit youth and elders, create support networking, create connection. If other people are looking in the community, they can fund programs that assist LGBTQ2S people. We need to provide queer sexual health education to youth. We need to remove the gender binary from our support systems and from so much of our language, and make sure that supports are not gendered, and that people who are gender diverse and two-spirited have access to shelters, addiction treatment, and that all those spaces that provide support are also safe spaces, and that people really need to educate themselves on the unique experiences of queer and two-spirited people, and making sure that they are creating a place and an atmosphere that is inclusive and supportive. And especially as well in our healthcare system, we need to improve access to healthcare and supports, especially for our trans and gender diverse community. And the last one I really want to highlight was ensuring the safety of two-spirit people in the sex industry and destigmatizing sex work, and making sure that two-spirit queer people all have access to equitable support.
Thank you, Mitch. Sarah, would you like to share what we can do here?
Well, and if we're going to change the wording from missing and murdered to honored and thriving, then, you know, going back to those pathways that the Yukon has kind of highlighted as we know that this is why we have this issue, then let's just come together and think of what could we do to address historical, multi-generational and intergenerational trauma? What are we doing here in our community on that? If we're not doing much, let's do more. If when you know that there is a status quo or we're doing something because the general population believes this is the way it should be done, then let's stop it and let's change it. Let's involve, as Mitch has said, involve people who are marginalized, who are being discriminated against, who are having and experiencing, trauma and violence. And so let's involve them. That's an action. And, let's stop ignoring the problem. That's an action. Stop ignoring it from this day forward. And we'll change missing and murdered to honored and thriving. Okay.
That way. Hi. Nicole, can you share?
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. I don't know how much more I can add to that, but I'll try. So regardless of your position or your place of work, bottom line is we're all treaty people. I say this because Canada, as a signatory of the treaties, represents each of you as Canadians. Therefore, you also have a role to play in upholding our treaties and working towards dismantling systems of oppression and colonization. So I think together we need to look at this through an empathetic lens. Let's create space for understanding of the causes of the systemic abuses that our fellow Canadians continue to experience. Let's begin by acknowledging that everyone should be entitled to lives free from violence. As settlers or immigrants, the first thing you can do is to listen to Indigenous peoples. We can learn so much about the crisis and how to help by listening to their stories with open ears and open hearts. The best way to become good allies to Indigenous peoples is to learn how from Indigenous peoples. Settlers also need to take a more active stance by challenging racism in our lives and pressuring our governments to do the same, because there's really only one thing that's disproportionate about the rates up here, and that is the ongoing disproportionate rates of violence. So when you hear something racist or sexist, point it out. There is a lot of work to be done, but if we all work together, we can put an end to the genocide. It's about learning and honoring our history and connections to the land. Building off what Stephanie says, I've heard a lot of times now that we're not calling it reconciliation, we're calling it reconciliation, because it's been years now and there's no action. Where are those, 94 calls for just or close to action in the TRC report? Let's look at those again. This is about actually doing the reading, doing history, doing homework. It's about standing up when you're seeing injustice. This is about missing and murdered Indigenous relations, but this is also about larger systemic issues that are affecting us. And so when we can take action, when we can stand up, then finally, hopefully, we will be able to reclaim our power and our place. And as Sarah said, we will be thriving. Thank you.
Tapway. Hi, Ms. Dahi, to this incredible panel. So powerful. We're honored to have you in our community. We're going to take some questions from our audience. We've had a few that have come in. Our first one is from Mary Landry. She says, are the police helpful or no when it comes to investigations? What changes would you recommend around these investigations? I'm going to open that up with Steph.
So if you have any police or RCMP questions, I'm so sorry to tell you, it is very vacant in your area. There is no rooted police, no rooted RCMP, and it's a lot of rookies. It's a lot of go through. It's a lot of the hitchhikers coming through. They come there, they get training, they leave. They come there, they get training, they leave. We need someone and police and RCMP that are rooted. And this system has to change, okay? So this is the strongest suggestion. Demand it. Demand that you have rooted police or RCMP in your area. And you all have to be a collective voice. You got to be all collective on this. And say we do not want any more rookies or trainees or people just passing through. And we want it redeveloped so that when they come into the community, they can't leave until they've done some good. They can't leave until they made the environment better, until they protected and served and done their job, right? So that initiative has to change, and yeah, it's vacant there. I'm sorry to say, it's impossible. Right now, they're investigating Ellie Herman. I've been in touch with the family, and they have great concerns, right? And rightfully so. As we always say, we don't always get the service. We don't always get the proper investment when it comes to Indigenous people, unfortunately. So we need to get more equal human rights when it comes to police procedure. These phone calls, these investigations, the follow-ups, the response. So I've already talked to Edmonton City Police as well, and I've asked them about murdered and missing when they call. What are you guys doing? What are you guys leading up? Like, how does this work? And they said it's a mess right now, to be honest, and they're trying to do something. There's a commitment to action for the police. Website is now up, so you can see what is going on, but they are making change. And I don't know, but I'm sorry to say it's very vacant up there. So we're hoping no more hitchhiker and no more passer passing through. You want rooted police and RCMPs, demand it.
Hi, thank you, Steph. Would anyone like to add to that? Nicole?
I'll add a little bit. Thank you for the question, Mary. And I think, again, we kind of need to go a little bit and look at the context of this historical relation with RCMP and our communities, because in the past, they used to be the Indian agents. They used to be the ones, giving us passes so we could legally leave the reserve. So there has been a history of distrust and mistreatment with many RCMP officers over the history of 500 years. And the thing we see happen now, unfortunately, it's a lot of this narrative that's coming out. It's, we have to wait 48 hours if somebody is going missing. And then after that 48 hours, maybe we hear, this rhetoric that she's just gone out partying, or they're just, they'll be back in a few days, and really characterize it as typical of this individual, when really the families know best. We know best what is happening to our relations. And so it's more about taking that action immediately when that is told to them. And it's not about dismissing or switching that narrative around. It's also, they need to be collecting more of that race-based data and doing the research and doing investigations. I think they need to be opening up cold cases from the past. We know of multiple incidents of cases in Alberta where there's been a mishandling of evidence. You can look at the case of Colton Boucher and how the RCMP officers treated his family. And we also have instances where, somebody is murdered, but they're classified as a suicide. And so how do we actually get this equal number and these real numbers to be able to further this work when we're not getting that assistance? So as just to build off what Stephanie says, it's got to be a whole lot of dismantling and rebuilding, and demanding action and demanding change. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to that question?
I just have one more thing. Just last year alone, there was a couple Indigenous women who they had wellness checks sent for them, and the police ended up shooting them in their homes for a wellness check. So the police are supposed to be, we've tasked our police with doing tasks that should be going to mental health supports or should be going to other supports, and they're not trained for them, and there's no excuse for shooting somebody like that in their own home. But it happened at least twice last year alone in Canada that Indigenous women were shot during a police visit for a wellness check, which is unacceptable.
That's right. Thank you, Mitch. Would anyone else like to add to the RCMP's position in our communities?
If I could just say something too, you know, I hope we can actually now begin conversations with the RCMP. Like, why isn't somebody representing the RCMP on this panel? You know, because that's where you can see this action being taken place. It's serious. It should be seen by that agency as a serious issue, not just their issue, not just Indigenous people's issue or that community's issue. It's our issue and their issue. And then, you know, I just would really, you know, one of the questions was, how do we get police to take this serious? We got to keep on pressuring them. We have to go and demand that they are doing something. Right now, you know, and I'm hoping in our community, because I'm actually staring at the RCMP station here from my home. You know, I would have liked to have seen a red dress hanging from their in their doorway, and they got trees there. They could hang it in the trees. I know that they are trying to make change. Well, what are they doing? What are those actions? I want some answers. And if anybody out there in our audience is working with the police or has had a question, you know, their RCMP stations, you know, what are you doing about it? Like, I'd like to hear from them as well, because I want to know what I can do instead of just looking at that building and wondering.
Thank you very much. We will take the next question now. Kennedy Marshall, Quay, I work as an MMIWG prevention worker in Sydney, Nova Scotia. What types of programs do you think would be appropriate in terms of prevention? That's a great question. Rhonda, would you like to open with that one?
Sure. I guess for me, my knowledge and perspective comes specifically around mental health, including addiction, in terms of the advocacy that I've been able to do. And I think it's just educating and talking about it, talking about the difficult things that many don't want to talk about or don't want to acknowledge that's occurring, hanging those dresses in the hallways and in schools, because it sparks conversation and curiosity. And I'm sure there's maybe there's not many resources, but I'm sure there's many resources that could be created around, you know, specific language for children. But I really do believe, you know, as a mother, having those conversations in real language, because it is a real problem, you know, and making sure to somehow get rid of the stigma of asking for help. And being able to reach out for help. And you know, I got to speak to a group of local grade 9 students. And one of the things I said to them was, don't keep any secrets, right? And so talking to kids about that as well, and then looking at the things they're seeing and encountering at home, the way they feel, and it's just really enhancing that it's okay. It's okay to be okay. And I guess programs around teaching, advising, and around language and racism, you know, and those kind of things. So, I mean, I couldn't talk enough to youth about mental health and addiction, and you know, that's just one little piece of what's happening here today in the lives of those who are missing and murdered. And it's not a piece for every one of them, but it is a piece of the bigger picture that's already been discussed here today. And so, you know, that's what I can give, I guess, suggestions in terms of that small piece of the puzzle, you know, for youth and children to learn how they can play a part, and also how to access help for themselves.
That's great. Thank you. Mitch, would you like to add to that?
Sure, I can add a little. I think the biggest things is education and mentorship and providing direct supports, making sure that we approach everything from an intersectional and equitable lens, and making sure that that the people who are affected are included in the conversation. And so if we look around the table and if the people we're trying to help aren't in the conversation, then we have the wrong group of people together. And so any kind of support that is developed needs to be developed with the communities that they're meant to support.
Absolutely. Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to that one? Yep.
It's really important that because every region, every community has different effects and different needs, so it's hard to kind of like pinpoint that. But what you do is you do an info session from the people you were trying to serve. You know, you just do an info session, a collection of data. You get their voices heard, and then you develop from there, because then you're truly serving who you're really trying to help by having them communicate the needs. So that's where you should always start. It's just very vast across this country, but it's there. It's there. So
That's great. Thank you. Nicole.
Yeah, I think a big part also, or a small part of it also, is some of this anti-violence work and trying to, teach about systems and how we can work towards creating better systems for all of our relations. It's about perhaps doing prevention with men and boys, and because we have to bring men and boys into this equation, and men and boys of all walks of life, not just Indigenous. We really need to get voices from our communities to be doing this. It can't just be coming from, a community leader, but prevention work needs to start from the ground up. I believe we really need to have grassroots initiatives. And so I think there's a lot of creative ways we can do this right now, even if it's just raising awareness initially. I think that it's a whole spectrum, prevention. And so I don't think I was very clear in that, but I think that it's the answers are in community. They're in each other. And so just talk with community members and see what they think the solutions are, especially our elders, and especially our youth. I think we have to get that generational linkage going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. We'll move on to I would like to hear from Rhonda. Sorry.
I just wanted to add something. Listening to Nicole, oftentimes, I like that this is coming from a school. I'm not sure in that province what it's like, but also, oftentimes prevention is one of the first things to get cut when there's funding cuts of the larger systems, and then that there's less dollars for prevention. And I think prevention is very important, and yeah, it just, in my experience, it's always the piece that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I think that advocacy and speaking up, and providing it, where we can and when we can is very important. So.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to add to that one? Okay, we'll take our next question, please. This is a question for Mitch. Art and literature is one way to reclaim and decolonize. What two-spirit artists or writers would you recommend?
So writers, I'd recommend Thompson Highway, Kiss of the Fur Queen, and Not Vanishing by Christos, which is a collection of poetry. As far as artists, I kind of only know them by their Instagram handles, but there's one I follow, Sweetgrass and Sage, and Moongirl 666, who have do beadwork and then as epoxy resin jewelry as well. And then as far as two-spirit performers, definitely recommend Jennifer DeFuck out of Halifax, Ella Lamoureux from Kelowna, Isis Rain is originally from Fort McMurray as well. And yeah, I think those are some great starting points. And just honestly, a quick Google search will show you so many.
That's right. Thank you. Sarah, would you like to add to that?
I was just trying to come up with his actual name, but he's Monkman. He's from, I want to say Quebec, maybe. Anyway, he does his art is it just is so full of all those pieces of teaching, you know, about the historical intergenerational trauma. Ken? Yeah, Kent Monkman. Yes, that's right. So search him up and look at some of his art. It's amazing.
Great, thank you, everyone. We'll go to another question. This question's from Donna Fay. How can we as Indigenous people make our relations with the RCMP and City Police understand how important it is to help protect our women and take our complaints seriously when they are reported, especially when our people go missing? Who would like to open with that one? Steph?
So right now, there is, like I said, the Commitment to Action website. So the Edmonton City Police are backing their chief for racial change. The chief, McPhee, is a Métis man. Carrie Thomason and I have been in a room with them and have voiced for the families and have voiced for the Indigenous people what they're doing wrong and how they're failing, and they collected all of that data, and we suggested other organizations that they should be meeting with, so they've done all the meetings, and so the website is the Commitment to Action for the Edmonton City Police, and also a lot of these findings they are going to be sharing with the RCMP. The RCMP has also collected a new table of people, and they have added my two-spirited friend Chevy Rabbit onto this platform. So that says a lot. This is something that's never happened before. So there are these initiatives moving forward, and we have voiced you know, the everything that they are terribly failing at. And so, yeah, they are going to be moving forward, and they've had many meetings since last year. And so I advise you to go there. And, you know, also they are interested in our website, that Four Winds has put together as well for our missing. So the police and RCMP have been are starting to reach out. So it's called aboriginalalert.ca, is a national website for our Indigenous missing people. You put up your profile, and it's sought across the country, and anyone in the country can print out the poster profile of your missing loved one. So you can do poster event runs and things like that. So yeah, so please go there and go to the Commitment for Action website and get educated on what the moves that they are making right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Nicole, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Sorry, can I ask for the question, to see the question again?
Sure. Just wait for our technical to pop it up.
But I will mention, because I know it does have to do with RCMP, if you all want to be a voice with us or for us, there is going to be a town hall with the RCMP on May 13th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And this is their annual engagement. And they're also going to be sharing their new policing priorities. So that will be online. So take a look at that. But in regards to this question, I might be a little bit radical in thinking at this point, after everything that's been written, after all of the reports, I don't think it's up to us anymore. I don't think the relationship building is on our behalf anymore. I think it's up to other institutions and other systems to be taking these actions, to be taking those reports and actually making them live. We've been trying to build relationships. We've been here this entire time. time. We have been saying this for literally centuries. And so what else are we supposed to say anymore? It's not about us. It's about you, or it's about them. Because why are people who are suffering of oppression and racism, why are we expected to be the ones to educate, to help heal, and to build relationships? So I think it's a super important question, but I think it needs to be switched and the onus needs to come off of us now. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Nicole. Would anyone else like to add to that?
Well, just specifically to that question, I would say to Donna and to anyone else, if you're not being heard, keep talking. And if you need to, if they're not listening and they're not responding, reach out to others, because there's others out there. There's any one of us, then there's more. There's more people. So just keep on. Don't be silent. Never be silent. And don't stop demanding justice.
And I also understand too that, you know, from the history of how they were developed, right? In the history of Indian affairs and the history, as long as you please know your history of it, okay? Then you can decide upon this foundation that needs to crumble. This foundation, there's so many foundations that systems are built upon, they need to crumble all the way down so that the people in community are and the people that they're supposed to be serving are involved in the rebuild. Okay, there is a reason for distrust. This has been a whole strategic thing that Canadians have done to Indigenous people. This is all premeditated. This was all planned. Okay, so you have to understand that. First, we have every right to feel the way we feel, but you need to know the why of why we are failed, right? And then upon that, can you move forward? Because now you clearly see the truth. Then change can be made, right? But we are highly guarded. And I see what the police and Rcmp are trying to do, yet guarded, right? And we have to, Indigenous people have always had to be guarded and protect ourselves, right? So we still have to move forward in that way. But it's all about what I want to see is action. They are doing this collection. They know what the problems are, right? So it's just, you know, it balls in their court now, man. It's their chess move.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Hi. Thank you very much to our panel for all those answers. We don't have time for more questions from our audience, but I just encourage you to check out any of our community partners, see resources, programs that we have within the community. We will also be sharing resources to support your ongoing learning, healing journey as well. So thank you for that. Do you have any final words for our community on Red Dress Day? Nicole?
It's been said before, but I'll say it again. This is not one day. This is not a special day or a special event. This is every day of our lives. And so I implore you to stand up, to speak out, to walk this path with us, because we're not going away. And so help us be that thriving community again. And let's create safe communities for everybody. Thank you all for joining us today, and I really hope to see you in the future at these events that we'll be hosting. Hi, Nyawa.
Thank you, Nicole. Sarah? Oh, Steph, go ahead.
Sure. So just so you know, help is coming to the north. Carrie Thomason and I are coming. And so I'm really excited about that. And I want to thank Fort McKay First Nations for all their amazing programming that is going on in my community. I am so happy. I'm so inspired. Everything that Athabasca Tribal Council is doing, all of you that are here today and everything that you're doing. Mitch, it's important what you do. It's important what you do. It really, really is. I'm very, very proud to have been with you guys today. But we need to really go into some vacancies that we need to pick up is the men and boys, okay? They need to be included. That's why I started the Indigenous Men and Boys Support Group of Edmonton on Facebook. So please go there. There's great resources. It's great resources. And we are two-spirited and LGBTQIA friendly. If you don't like it, stuff it. Okay. And so we also are, you know, trying to pick up the slack when it comes to how industry is affecting our people in this province and how industry is affecting on different levels and how they're contributing to this problem, especially when Enbridge workers have just been charged with human trafficking. Okay, so that's a major thing that we need to pick up on as well. And our youth, our future. So my TEDx talk has been used in social studies and classes. So I'm really happy about that because you need to know the history, and they weren't teaching us the proper history, and they still ain't. The curriculum now for Alberta is a big worry. So please do right by our kids. Please do right by our kids. Be careful what you're teaching our kids. So we need to fight for that. And what's going on in our province, we need to fight. We need to not fight between each other. No hate, no separation. It's high school. It's childish. It's ridiculous. With a fight needs to be saved for where we are failed. Save the fight for that. Please be sensible. We see what's going on in the world, and we need each other more than ever. And remember, we all have a raging fire within us. Just share your warmth and watch everything beautiful in the world thrive. Marcy Cho.
Halfway. Thank you. Would anyone else like final words before we close out the panel discussion?
Maybe I'll just give a little shout out to all those people and agencies within our community, Nistawoyou Friendship Center, the Wood Buffalo Wellness. You guys are doing amazing work out there. ATC, thank you so much. And even those smaller little places that might get forgotten, Fort Chip, all the power over there to you. And same with Chip Prairie Dene. Just beautiful work. I just can't say enough of how proud I am and happy that we are doing something and you're all doing something, taking action. So that's, thank you. Kananasko, Kanawa.
And also we can't forget who we're really here for. And that's for all are murdered, all are missing, all are exploited, all of them that are gone, that are not here with us. That we love you, we honor you. We're doing everything that we can. I know that our ancestors and our spirit and our you know, as a Métis person, as a First Nations person, you know, all this power, all this survival, all this, you know, it's not only our identity is not all of this loss. Our identity does not always have to remain in the dark. We are coming to the light, and all of this spirit is light. All of this love is light. All of this action should be moving so fast that you can only see light. Okay? So let's not forget that we honor and that we love and that we move forward for those that are not here with us. Thank you.
Hi.
And
Mitchell?
I just want to say that action starts with the individual, and I encourage everyone who's watching to start doing their own research and not putting always a burden on Indigenous people to have to advocate for themselves. We're all here to share and learn, and we're happy to do so, but that puts a huge burden on us and can be extremely emotional, and it's a lot of emotional labor. So I encourage people to start by educating themselves. There are so many resources out there. And then when you come with the basics, then come speak to the Indigenous people in your life and ask them to teach you further. We're happy to share. We're happy to progress. And decolonization, it's an ongoing process that all of us have to take part in. And without active participation for everybody, we won't get anywhere.
Thank you, Mitch. Rhonda?
Yeah, I was just going to say just a couple, I guess, key points is, you know, to be an ally and have allyship, you don't have to understand and know all of it. It's that beginning and joining, and it's okay not to understand and stand beside someone and just listen or just be there. That can be very powerful. And then the learning comes. That's what I've experienced. And then, you know, the other piece is, you know, as a local advocate and on some advisory, is there needs to be everybody at the table. And if there isn't everybody at the table, you need to speak up and say, where are they? Why are they not here? You know, and that's happened in a couple contexts for me in the last year, and people weren't aware they needed to be there. And that's concerning. That's concerning to me. So I think it's, yeah, just looking at that advocacy and allyship, and there's parts of it we'll never understand ourselves, or understand different parts, you know, more. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to understand all of it to help and to be an ally and speak up. So.
That's right. Tapway. Hi. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions and for listening in. A big thank you to our esteemed panel for sharing knowledge, passion. You are so powerful. We're so grateful to have you exacting change within our communities. So, kinanas komiten. I would now like to welcome Lynn Chartrand of ATC to join us to share with some upcoming events happening within our community. Tanse, Lynn. You're on mute. It's okay. We'll give Lynn a couple seconds.
My apology. Thank you, Tanse. Manando. Hi, I'm Lynn Chartrand. I'm the Indian Residential School and Missing and Murdered Women and Girls Support Worker with the Athabasca Tribal Council. ATC is one of our many co-hosts for today's event. My community is the Fort McMurray First Nation 468, located on the Willow Lake in Treaty 8 territory.
Great, thank you. So can you please let us know some of the awareness that are going to be happening today and ongoing?
Absolutely. Happy to share some of the events that will be happening in the Wood Buffalo that are creating further awareness. The following businesses and public infrastructures will be lit up in red. Center Fire Place, Shell Place, Saline Creek Pedestrian Bridge and Waterways, Fort McMurray 468 First Nation, North Star Ford Lincoln, Syncrude Tower, Fort McMurray International Airport Control Tower, Anzac Mall, or to name a few of them. Further to, there is red dress displays in individual yards or organizations throughout our areas. Keanu College has a red dress display in their park area. In Thickwood at the Rotary Club gazebo, red dresses are being displayed there also. McMurray Métis has their teepee lit up in red to shine a light on this national issue and to honor all the victims, survivors, and their families. On the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo Facebook pages, there is a social media frame that you could take and put on your Facebook and change it. It's super awesome. In Fort McMurray's today's newspaper, there is also a cutout in the centerfold for you to cut out and put in your window or on the door to bring awareness for MMIWG. This was delivered on April 29th in many homes in our region. Some of the upcoming workshops would be ATC is having a red dress pin for the First Nation members of ATC and off-reserve members living in Fort McMurray at the end of May. Please watch for our post on ATC's webpage. Internet Safety for Youth, hosted in partnership with the Nistawoyou, Association Friendship Center and the Girls Inc. So they're doing internet safety for youth. Also, they have the Friendship Center will also have their Red Dress Bannock Eclair workshop with Ginger Arger. Also look on the social media for virtual events taking place today, as there's many. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm wondering if you can share any resources to provide ongoing support for healing and learning journeys.
Absolutely. We also want to encourage our community to continue the education on the subject of MMIWG2 Spirited Plus. So we recommend checking out the following resources. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. They provided an executive summary titled Reclaiming Power and Place for the Public, and it can be found, and I believe it's in the chat, the link that was posted, and then it'll also be posted after this. There is also the Native Women's Association of Canada. They provided a fact sheet on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and that could be also found, which there is a link on the chat also. It also should be noted that these resources do include the 2S LGBTQ plus persons as well. Yeah, that's what I have.
Hi, thank you, Lynn. Please be sure to keep an eye out for those events in our community, as well as follow up with some of those resources. Of course, there are programs, resources through our community partners, so please support them, check them out as well as they continue doing the good work on the ground. Thank you, Lynn. Well, my friends, that concludes the informational portion of our gathering. Thank you for taking the time to listen, to learn and unlearn as we recognize Red Dress Day and the importance of moving forward together. Before we go, I would like to share something I read the other day from Mohawk artist Dawn Setford. And she said, "May our missing sisters, mothers, daughters, aunties, nieces, and friends feel our breath on their faces from all the 4 directions. May they inhale our love, capture our strength, and find their way home. And may the ones in the spirit world watch over us and know that they are missed." I would like to welcome back Elder Lorraine Cardinal Corrigan as we hold a moment of silence to remember and to honor the missing and murdered and exploited Indigenous peoples, as well as to ground our day in prayer.
Let's take a moment of silence to think about why we are here today, about our missing sisters. Creator, we are all coming together today and asking you to bless all the people that are participating in this gathering, and pray that we come together as one and heal each other. We are saying a special prayer for the missing and murdered Indigenous women who never made it home. And we are asking to bless all Indigenous women. We need to show strength, love, kindness to one another. We have to stay strong for our missing, murdered Indigenous women and teach and protect our young generation to strive and let them walk hand in hand together. May the deepest wounds of humanity against women be healed. Stay safe. Kananam skuntin, hey hey, mercy.
So thank you to all our guests today, our panelists, our community partners, our sponsors, our donors, our volunteers for making this day successful. Don't forget what this day is all about. Please continue the conversation after May 5th. Take care and be safe, everyone. Ekuse.